This Jeep right here is unlike any other model that's come from the brand. It's fully electric, it's front wheel drive, and it's absolutely tiny. And in this review, I'll tell you why that's good and what's not so good about it. So if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and ring that bell, and let's get to it. Before this car even launched in Australia, the brand lopped thousands of dollars off the initial pricing, and honestly, they could have done more to the price. It is still a bit expensive compared to some of the rivals that you might consider that have more EV driving range and are bigger for this kind of money. Now, the entry-level version is called the Longitude. It starts at just under $50,000. It does have a few decent features that you might like, including LED lights for the headlights, and you've also got 17-inch alloy wheels, and at the back there's halogen taillights, which is a bit strange. But on the inside, it's got cloth trim, a 10.25-inch media screen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and there's also a digital instrument cluster, but it's smaller in the base model than in the higher spec versions. And it has slower AC charging as well, 7 kilowatts versus 11 kilowatts if you step up to the mid-spec model. And if you do, it's an extra $5,000 to get into that mid-range version, which is called the Limited. It gets different cloth and techno leather trim on the inside, so it's fake leather. It also gets a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster, and there's a wireless charging pad. You get USB ports in the second row as well, and it also gets that faster charging, as I said. And then there's this version here, which is the Summit, which is $60,990, which is very, very expensive for a car of this size with less than 400 kilometers of EV driving range. It's very, very pricey, but it does have a lot of extra features over the mid-spec model. You're getting 18-inch diamond cut alloy wheels, there's projector LED headlights, LED tail lights at the back, and on the inside it gets a part leather trim, and there's also electric seat adjustment for the driver, not for the passenger, heating for the front seats, there's a massage function for the driver's seat as well, so the passenger misses out on a few features. There's a sunroof in this spec as standard. It's not one of those big glass roofs though, and so it does feel like you're getting a few extra features for the money, but maybe not as much as you might hope for. And there's some safety differences between the grades as well, which we'll get to later on. But let's talk about some alternatives that might be better value for money, because there are some good ones. So if you're looking for a compact electric vehicle and you want it to be very easy to live with, well, maybe the MG4 would be a better bet, and it will cost you a lot less as well. The entry-level version is now around $33,000 drive away, and for that you're getting a smallish battery, about the same size as this in the entry-level version, and also you're getting 10 years of warranty, which does make it a very appealing choice if you are considering an EV that you will hang on to for a long time. It's practical, it's smart, it's maybe a little bit austere and lacks a bit of character compared to this car, but I still think that it stacks up beautifully in terms of value for money. Then there's plenty of other newcomers that you might want to consider. The Xpeng G6, which I'm really looking forward to driving. It's a much bigger vehicle for around $55,000 and has heaps of great features as well. And also the Zeekr X, which is a compact model with plenty of wow factor inside and out. And I can't wait to drive it either, so make sure you subscribe and you'll be notified when I do get a chance to drive each of those EVs. And finally, if you're not so sure if an EV will be right for you, well, maybe you could consider something hybrid like the Lexus LBX. The smallest Lexus in the range is very city friendly, super duper fuel efficient as well, comfortable, luxurious, and stacks up beautifully on price as well. Starting price of below 50 grand, and you're getting a Lexus for that kind of money. So that does add some wow factor in my opinion. Would you choose any of those or something else? Let me know in the comments. I said before that this is a tiny little Jeep, and it is. It's bloody minuscule almost. It's just over 4 meters in length, and it has lots of those clever, cutesy little Jeep design elements that you might love or you might think are a bit silly. So you've got the traditional grille finish there, because that's not so much a traditional grille finish. There's also a compass down on this radar cover, and you've also got little Easter eggs like this little boy looking through a telescope, which is the designer's son. It's taken from a photo of the designer's son. Now, yes, it does look very compact, very cute, and it even looks pretty good with a bit of mud on it too. So look, I think maybe something that might be something you want to keep in mind for parents in particular is that your door handles are a little high if your kiddo is at the age where they can reach to get into the back, that might be a little bit annoying, but I think that it's a beautifully proportioned little car, and there's even more Easter eggs at the back. So you can see there's like the headlights and the grille of the old Willis Jeep, and in the back I'll show you a few more, but let's just have a square on look at it. Yeah, it's cute. It's really, really cute. Let's have a look in the boot, see what we are dealing with here. It does have an electric tailgate, on this spec at least. Okay, so there are a few more Easter eggs in here. You can see on the back of the tailgate, there's the JJ model code, which is for this vehicle. Little design sketches there, that's cute. And you've also got a mountain range on top of the brake light, which is kind of cool. There's plenty more little Easter eggs in this vehicle, but let's have a look at the boot space. It is a decent amount of space, I would say, and it does have a 2-stage floor to allow you to store your cables underneath, but it doesn't have any spare wheel, so that might be something you want to keep in mind. Like lots of EVs, there is no spare, you just get a tire repair kit. There is a shopping bag hook there, a light, another shopping bag hook, and it is reasonably practical, I would say, for a small family or for an urban runabout. So let's take a look inside and see what it's like in there. Okay, so let's check out the interior. From the driver's point of view, it is a pretty nice looking cab, but it doesn't have as much bling or wow factor as some other vehicles. It's maybe a little bit safe in terms of the design, but there are some really handy elements to the storage in this cabin. So there's this massive shelf that runs across the dashboard here, which is great for loose items. There's also a glove box, which is a partitioned one of those French style ones with the bigger part there that you can actually fit stuff in. There's decent sized bottle holders in the doors, and here there's also plenty of space in this open trench area. So you've got a wireless phone charger, which is not standard on all grades. There's USB A and C ports, a 12 volt down there, and another storage area there. That can fit a handbag apparently, and I don't have a handbag on me, but I will say this, the wireless phone charger is rubbish. It's too slow. In fact, I had my phone sitting on there for an hour and it actually lost charge while it was sitting there. Not good enough. Down here you'll find your drive mode selector. It changes the display as well when you do that. And behind there is a cup holder section, so you can set it up so that your cup is just like that, and that's pretty easy to get at. But now I've configured it with a more suitable setup for 2 cups, and it just means that you have to be a bit more delicate and nuanced in the way that you get your coffee cup in and out. And I guarantee that someone is going to very quickly lose their lid and fill that up with yucky brown liquid of the coffee type. This little armrest does slide forwards and backwards, but it doesn't lift up to give you more storage. The seats are pretty nice. There's a good amount of comfort to these seats. Manual for the passenger in all grades though, so maybe not as good as it could be. Again, you do have heating but not cooling, and you've also got no massage function for the passenger seat, but you do for the driver. The little controls down here allow you to adjust the massage function. It's electric. There's no memory settings for the seats either, so if you have a big height disparity between you and your partner, might not be ideal. Thankfully, the steering wheel is a beautiful size and it's nice to grip as well. Easy to learn controls for the most part too, and you've got your trip computer stalk control there, so you hit that one there and that will adjust what shows up on the screen. You can get a glimpse at your status for the trip that you've been doing, and also have a look at your instant consumption if you're worried about running out of range. Your little range indicator down there to tell you how much you've got left, and obviously that part there will tell you that as well. And on this side it'll tell you whether you're driving efficiently or not, depending on when you are driving. So there's another 10.25-inch screen here. It's not a bad one, I have to say. It's got a few different menus that you can go into. You can set up charging timers if you want to. You can see what your stats have been like before, and there's a drop-down menu as well for some quick controls. You can also go back to the home button here and swipe between different menus too. So you've got built-in sat nav. There's more controls for your seat heating there too, and your climate control stuff is there. But there is a conventional array of controls down here. So you've got a fan adjuster, you've also got temperature adjuster, so it's got single zone climate control, and yes, these are lovely. I love the fact that there are buttons. There's also a volume knob, but it never goes back to center how I want it to. It's sort of, the detents aren't on the center line. That's just fidgety, annoying stuff for me. There's also here, you've got some controls. So you've got a home button to take you back to the home screen, a car button so you can quickly go to the shortcuts to turn off the lane keeping assistance if you don't want it on. I've actually found it to be okay in this car. And you can also check out your ADAS systems here if you want to keep an eye on your safety technology and how it's interacting with you or interrupting you on your drive. Oh, and if you're wondering where your gear selector is, it's down here. It's a panel with buttons rather than a stalk or a shifter. So yeah, that might take a little bit of getting used to, but you will, I'm sure. Now, all right, what about the important stuff like vanity mirrors? Yeah, they're not illuminated in any grade of this vehicle. So if you're someone who likes to show up looking their best, you might have to use the auto dimming rear view mirror instead. Same on the other side. There is a sunroof. It's not the biggest roof and it's not sunny either, but there's a blind here that's manually closable and your controls to open the sunroof are there. There's a 2-tap button for the boot if you want to open the boot electrically. There's an SOS button. If you're in an accident, it means that you can hit that button and it will call emergency services and tell them where you are, because this car does have connected services with location. So all those things, I think, add to the package here. It's not ideal in some ways, but it is pretty good in a lot of other ways. But let's check out the backseat space and see how it stacks up. Okay, so before I jump in, I just want to show you something. This sill is actually massive, and that part there makes it hard for big-footed individuals to get in easily. So you've sort of got to origami yourself into this position. So yes, this is set for my driving position at 182 centimeters or 6 foot. Yes, my knees do sit hard up against the seat back, and it's not the most comfortable thing for someone my size. Headroom, at least, is very good. So if you are maybe shorter in the legs and longer in the torso, you should be okay back here. Let's have a look at some of the other features in this second row. So you do get a USB-C port, but only on the mid and top spec models. There's map pockets on both seat backs, which is good. There's a pair of ISOFIX points on the window seats, which is another nice inclusion. 3 top tethers too, but there is no flip down armrest, no cup holders, no bottle holders in the doors. And these doors are covered with hard, unpleasant feeling plastic the whole way down the door. So if you like to take people with you and they like to rest their arms, it won't be comfortable for them. And yes, no directional air vents in the back either. It is a small cabin, so you should get pretty decent airflow, but something to keep in mind. You do have these handy little push to turn on lights, which are actually pretty good. And they're nice and bright and nicely positioned if you do have kiddos in the back. All versions of the Avenger come with a 51 kilowatt hour NMC battery pack, and that means a range of between 390 and 396 kilometers based on WLTP testing, based on the variant that you choose. Your charge port is at the rear here on the curb side, which is great if you're a street parker and you need to be able to access it easily rather than running cables all over the place. Yes, it's got a Type 2 combination plug. If you choose the base model car, the AC rate is just 7 kilowatts, which is a little bit slower than some. But if you choose either the mid-spec or the high grade, it goes up to 11 kilowatts. I don't like the fact that they charge extra for that, but it should mean a reasonably quick charging time on AC if you've got access to 3-phase. And then there's also DC charging at a maximum rate of 100 kilowatts, which is quicker than some of the other rivals out there. And you can see on screen how long it should take to achieve a decent amount of charge at a public fast charger. So what do you think? I think it's not too bad in terms of the specs and the charging elements, but that range figure might be not enough for some Aussie buyers because range anxiety is still a real thing. You might think of Jeep as a 4x4 brand, but this is not a 4-wheel drive. It's a front-wheel drive electric small SUV, and it has a front-mounted motor, as you can see there, with a single-speed transmission with 115 kilowatts of power and 260 newton meters of torque. That's not bad, and it is a relatively light electric vehicle as well. You'll see the weight on your screen now, and it's also not a fast electric vehicle. Actually, I'll show you that when we go for a drive. Let's do that now. So what is the Avenger like to drive? Well, in city situations, it's actually really competent. On the open road, it is also pretty good, but I have to say that the steering is probably the biggest consideration for this car. It doesn't really have the most amount of feel or natural responsiveness to it. It just takes a little bit of learning to figure out how the steering responds in different situations. At city speeds, like I said, it's less noticeable, but once you start to push a little harder on country roads, you might notice that it feels just a little bit too light in the center, and then maybe a little bit over assisted once you start to actually turn the wheel a bit further. But what has impressed me is the ride comfort in rough road situations. So we've driven on a few less than perfect surfaces today, and the suspension is actually really good. It manages to deal with different lumps and bumps in the surface pretty comfortably, and it never really feels like it's uncomfortable or sharp or jarring or anything like that, which is a real trait that Jeeps have, right? They do feel like you sit up a bit higher and you coast over the little lumps and bumps in the road surface. And even though this does have a bit more of an urban friendly vibe to it, it does feel pretty good over mixed surfaces and deals well with those sharper edges too. So from the ride comfort perspective, it's good. The steering, maybe not my most exciting steering experience that I've had this year, but it does handle itself pretty well through corners too. So one thing about this car when it comes to the driving dynamics is that it is light. It's a lot lighter than most other EVs. It's also a lot smaller, obviously, but it's just over 1,500 kilos. So that means that it doesn't feel as cumbersome to drive as some other EVs at this kind of money. So if you do like that real nimble, zippy sort of feeling, I mean, it's not necessarily the fastest accelerating car, we'll get to that in a sec, but it is still a very light feeling EV, which I like about it. It's sort of very reminiscent of the Peugeot E2008, funnily enough. And when it comes to the powertrain, well, it's not the most powerful little electric vehicle in the world, but we'll just give it a little bootful from this intersection here, see what it's like. Oh, firstly, hear that? Let's turn these wipers off. Firstly, listen to the blinker. I love that blinker sound. It's like a drum. All right, let's go. So from a standstill, yeah, it's not lightning fast, but it does get away pretty well. And I think that the thing with this car is that it's maybe not as speedy as some of the other vehicles that you might want to consider. Like the 0 to 100 claim is 9 seconds for it. So lots of other electric vehicles at this kind of money are much faster. So if that matters to you, it might be a consideration. But if it doesn't matter to you, then you're going to get a pretty easy to manage electric vehicle drive experience. There's regen braking, as you would expect. So it will try and recover a little bit of potentially lost energy and feed that back to the battery pack to keep your battery at its optimum level. And there's also a B mode for the driving, so that means there's an enhanced brake recuperation mode. You just hit the little button on the gear selector down there, put it into B, and it will be a bit more assertive in terms of the regen brakes. But it doesn't have like a single pedal driving mode. That's the closest thing you can get to single pedal, but it still does do a pretty assertive job and a pretty easy to manage job when it comes to the braking. But one thing I have noticed about the brake pedal is that when you're doing slow speed maneuvers like parking or something like that, you might notice that the brake feel is not quite as good as it could be. One of my main criticisms with this vehicle though is the amount of road noise intrusion into the cabin. Over, rougher road surfaces, it does get a fair bit of roar coming through into the cabin. Obviously it's otherwise silent because it's an EV, but you do sort of get a little bit more noise than you might hope for at freeway speeds when the road surface isn't perfect below you. And more generally, I think this is a pretty competent and pretty nice little car to drive. For an urban driver, I think it will be a really nice companion. It's just if you can justify the price, because there are so many options out there, and this one is a little bit expensive. But hey, let's talk about efficiency, because there's some things we need to consider. All right, on your screen, you'll see the official energy consumption figure for the Avenger. And I think that that is a reasonable number to try and achieve in mixed driving situations. So if you're not aware, electric cars, just like petrol and diesel cars, the lower the number, the better when it comes to efficiency. And I'll show you now what I've achieved over this test. And it's not necessarily a scientific test, not doing the usual stuff that I do. I'm in Queensland for this launch event, and it's been a lot of higher speed and twisty road driving, but I still think that the number that I've seen is pretty impressive. The Jeep Avenger scored a 3-star safety rating from Euro NCAP, so it's not the safest vehicle you could choose if you base your decisions on what the safety authorities say. There's still a decent amount of safety technology on offer across the range though, things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. There's a form of adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assistance even on the base model, and you also get a reversing camera and rear parking sensors on that entry-level grade. If you step up to the next model up, you also get 180-degree camera view with front, rear and side parking sensors as well. And blind spot monitoring is standard on the mid and top spec models too. But I think it's just a bit rude to ask people to pay extra to get all those extra safety features which are standard on so many other models at similar or less money. I think it's a bit rude, honestly. And when it comes to the annoying elements of the safety features, there aren't any. There's no driver monitoring camera, so that's a plus. And there's also no annoying bing bong technology for the speed sign recognition, which is standard on the mid and top spec. Again, one of those things that just could have been democratized across the range, but it's not, unfortunately. And when it comes to airbags, there are 6 dual front side and full length curtain coverage, but you don't get one of those clever front center airbags that protects you from head clashes. That's part of the reason this car only scored 3 stars. In Australia, Jeep offers a 5-year, 100,000 kilometre warranty, which is okay, but not as good as some of the others out there. There's an 8-year, 160,000 kilometre warranty for the battery pack, which is on par with most other EVs, but there are some things that set the Jeep apart compared to those other models that you might consider. They are the service intervals. They're shorter than most at 12 months and 12,500 kilometres per visit. And if you live a long way from your Jeep dealership, that might get frustrating because some other EVs have service intervals at 2 years and 40,000 Ks. So especially if you do a lot of distance, it might get frustrating to keep going back to the Jeep dealership. And the service pricing is not too bad, $250 per visit for the first 5. But remember, that's a shorter amount of distance than some other vehicles for that kind of cash as well. You do get 5 years of roadside assistance included. And if you keep the car for longer than 5 years, so long as you keep going back to the Jeep dealership, they'll keep renewing your roadside assistance as well. So all of those things, I don't know. I don't think it's the best on paper in terms of the ownership prospects, but certainly not the worst either. If you just want a little electric vehicle, maybe you live urban, you don't care that much about EV driving range, this could be a really good choice. It's funky, it's fun, and it's very livable in urban situations, but hey, I just think that it's a bit too expensive. Honestly, if this was 10 grand cheaper, they'd sell plenty of them, but it's gonna struggle in terms of sales, in my opinion. But tell me what you think about it at this price point. Is it good value? I'd love to know. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and ring that bell, and I'll see you when I see you.